All right. So today in our Sadhaka interview series, we're interviewing Sajjan. Thanks for coming, Sajjan. Great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's such a great honor and a privilege to be able to connect a little more with the community, with the Sangha.
Yeah, wonderful. So I guess we'll just jump straight into the questions and start picking your brain about your past and present future in devotional service. Let's see
Mm.
here. I'd like to start with this question. It somehow sets the stage nicely, I think. And I tend to ask it every time as the first question. And that is, what was your first religious experience that you can remember?
Yes. Well, it's amazing, the whole story of Sajan, so to speak, has been one which demonstrates the principle which Srila Sridhar Maharaj spoke about so often of the descent of grace rather than kind of like a climbing or efforting process of achieving different kind of states or experiences or in in spiritual life. It's just one long story of comprehensive causeless grace, which began back in the spring of 1975 when I was a junior in college at the time, and my friend Gary was very much absorbed in practicing the Patanjali yoga system. It just happened to be that way. And one day he happened to be standing at his kitchen stove, just stirring a pot of rice very serenely and wearing like kind of like a yoga jumpsuit or something. And like we were buddies already, for like a couple of years at that point. So I said, Gary, what are you into? And he chuckled a little. He said, "You really want to know?" I said, "Yes, And so he said, "Come with me." He stopped cooking his rice. I said, "Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt your cooking. Please forgive me." He said, "No, no, I'm not hungry. I can do anytime. This is really important. Come with me." And he brought me into his bedroom and he showed me his walls had pictures of several different famous yoga masters, and on his desk was a copy of Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, like the second edition from the large full edition from 1972 with Krishna and Arjuna on the cover. With the horses' faces and being so intense. And so he just kind of like pointed around. He said, "These are perfect masters. This is a perfect book, and this is a perfect path." And then he literally gave me like a crash course in like the whole Patanjali yoga system in like 30 minutes or less, literally. And it's the first time I had ever heard any of that. I knew nothing, I read nothing, I studied or practiced nothing. I was just a junior in college, with ordinary, goals, so to speak. And so he said, "Would you like me to lead you through a guided meditation? It will be very relaxing." Those are his exact words. I said, "Sure." So he told me to lie down on his carpet and he led me through some guided meditation, in a particular way. Um, and within like literally, I just followed the sound of his voice and his instruction. And literally within like, again, within just a matter of minutes, like 20 minutes or so, the whole world was gone. The whole personality of Alan, at the time, Alan was gone. There was no thought. There were no sensations. There was no material phenomena of any kind. There was just pure awareness, aware of nothing but itself. No special visions or, anything, just pure consciousness, aware of nothing but itself. Now, Gary didn't tell me that that was going to happen. And I didn't know what was happening because I knew nothing, I read nothing, expected nothing. And so within a short time, I had no idea. There was no time, there was no direction, no identity, nothing. And so within a short time, I felt him shaking my shoulder, and he was looking over me. When I opened my eyes, however much time had passed, I don't know. He was standing over me and shaking my shoulder and going, "Alan, Alan, are you all right? Are you all right?" I said, "Well, yes. Why?" He said, "Why? Because only the whites of your eyes were showing, and your whole body was trembling," which later on I learned was like classic textbook symptoms of someone in a state of nirvikalpa samadhi, so to speak. And he said, what happened? What did you experience? I explained to him the same thing I just mentioned to you. And he said, "That's not fair." And he had this big Cheshire cat grin on his face. Of course, I didn't know what that meant. What do you mean it's not fair? He said, "Because some people try for 30, 40, 50 years or a lifetime to like experience that, and they can't accomplish it. And here you just like walk into my bedroom, lie on the ground, and you're there." He said, "So it's obvious that this is not your first encounter with the yoga teachings or with spiritual experience, etc., like that." He said, "But seriously, it's a great gift. It's a great gift." I said, "Thank you so much. You're very kind. Thank you." And so that was like, it was, I don't even use the word, generally not the word samadhi in relation to that, because it was just a brief glimpse. It was just like, as it has been mentioned by so many of our acharyas in the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, it is said that such an experience is the beginning of real spiritual life, rather than like like an endpoint, or like something like that. So it was literally like back to business as usual the next day. I attended classes exactly on time, very early in the morning. I graduated with a B plus average, the following year. And then I didn't have any like agenda to like follow up on what the experience I had. But here's the key part, that our beloveds, Sri Sri Radha Govinda Sundar, they just took charge of this whole body, mind, heart instrument, and they guided me into my first ISKCON temple, which was New Dwarka in Culver City, Los Angeles County, and etc. And the process continued. But it's a confirmation of what we also have always heard from the ancient most texts of spirituality, that even a moment's glimpse of pure truth, pure reality, is enough to kind of like change one's entire destiny, one's entire life, which it did. In a very dramatic way like that. So I hope that was not too extensive of an
No,
answer.
that's very interesting. So you didn't have any like religious or spiritual experiences as a child. Is that the case, or?
It's funny. I would love to speak about what I feel deeply in my heart to be the real meaning of the word religiousness, rather than just speak about kind of like formal Christianity or something like that. And here's why I say that. Because in my own life, religion was, for the most part, kind of like a socio-cultural phenomenon, which was passed down from previous generations in the blood-related family. Religion seemed to be something that was somewhat comforting, yet non-intrusively incidental, we could say. Thankfully, I was never obligated to go to church at any time, even on the major holy days. So the organic effect which that had upon me, again, by divine arrangement, is that on my own, I began taking a gentle interest in the life and teachings of Lord Jesus, which gradually, over the course of a few years, had a very profound effect on my own interest in religion, which was completely independent of my parents' influence, except in two highly significant respects. My parents demonstrated what I would consider to be genuine religiousness by being extremely wholesome, responsible, morally upright people with simple grassroots practicality. For example, they never used profane language or drank alcohol, like, simple things like that. And when I was a child, on one occasion, my mother said to me, "Sweetheart, just be the best person that you can be, and God will always help you." And the second huge religious input from my parents was that my mother was like an angel, unconditionally loving and supportive at all times, including when I first moved into the New Dwarka ISKCON temple in the summer of 1976. Even when I apologized for being like a moderately demonic child and teenager, she asked me to give her examples because she didn't remember me in that way at all. So, and even when I mentioned what those things were, her response was, "Oh, all kids do that. All teenagers do that. That's no big deal." She kind of like, in her eyes, I could do no wrong. So to me, that's true religiousness. And she was my first Vartma Pradarshika Guru for demonstrating by example unconditional love, which later on was expounded upon so beautifully, by Srila Sridhar Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada and Srila Tripurari Maharaj, etc., like that.
Nice. So your parents were religious, but very like non, what's the word you used? Intrusive. Yeah.
They were not, they never imposed or tried to kind of like artificially shape me into being an exact replica of them. And I think that's a gift that I didn't even realize, the value of it, of that type of gift, until much, much later in life. When I started hearing stories about how other friends' parents tried to like turn them into exact, replicas or carbon copies of them. Now, of course, just, to be full disclosure, or to give the whole story, my father was not quite as unconditionally loving as my mother, bless his heart. He was a little had a little different reaction when I moved into the temple and shaved my head and, devoted my whole life to like, Gaudiya Vaishnavism, etc. like that. His response was a little different, but, by divine arrangement, he and my mother were not living together anymore at that point. He actually left the house when I was 7 years old. But this is another thing that I never realized was so amazing until much later in life. My parents never spoke a single ill word about each other, even after they were separated and divorced. They never spoke ill of each other. They were always totally supportive of each other. My father, like always, like, was there for me on the weekends to take me places and like that. So, it meant a lot to feel kind of like, that love and support from both parents, even though they had, they were not living together anymore in the same building, like, at a certain point, like that.
Right, right. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about how you then found Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Like, how did that happen? And then you can also tell us how you ended up in the New Dwarka temple.
Yeah, yeah. Oh boy. It's funny. While I, I think it was even before that first major spiritual experience that I mentioned to you earlier. While I was in college, I graduated with a BA in theatrical arts from CUNY, the Brooklyn College campus. Um, with this, and so I was in my directing class, and like earlier, maybe the same day or a couple of days before, the devotees from the I believe the Brooklyn temple, before moving to the big Manhattan temple that they had on 55th Street. They were in Brooklyn first, then moved to Manhattan, then after that moved back to a different location in Brooklyn. But in any case, they came and did a little Harinam on the campus, the Brooklyn College campus. And I just kind of saw them and thought, okay, yes, I remember hearing the song, the Hare Krishna mantra in the play Hair, that play Hair, on the Broadway play, and the record album later. And then, of course, George Harrison, major Vartma Pradarshika guru there, George Harrison with his, spreading of the Hare Krishna mantra, etc. And supporting Srila Prabhupada in just the extensive way that he did, back in the late 60s, early 70s. And so, but it didn't leave an impression on me, seeing the devotees on the campus, very briefly. I was just kind of passing by. And then I was up in the, what's it called? The sound booth in the theater, and I was like directing like a little play, a one act play. And so like, I was in the sound booth, and they on the table, like, to the right of me, there was a copy of Krishna book, a small paperback edition of the second volume of the Dwarka Lila. And so I thought the thought came to me, wouldn't it be amazing if this book over here contained like, the answers I've been looking for, deep, profound spiritual truth. And so I picked up the book, and I thought, I'll just open it up to any page at random and see what's there, So I just like flipped open the book and opened it up and started reading, and it said, the great Lord Vishnu tricked Vrikasura into touching his own head with his finger, and it then broke into 1,000 pieces due to the curse of, et cetera, et cetera. And I went, no, I guess I was wrong. The answers are not in this book. It doesn't contain any profound spiritual truth. Okay, no problem. I put it down. But I mentioned that because it just shows how, like the divine will moves in its own way, at its own time frame, in its own pace, accordingly, not expected, not like what's expected. So then later on, when I graduated from college, I was living out in Atwater, a little Hispanic suburb outside of Glendale, which was nearby to Culver City, like that. And a friend of mine upstairs, he let me, he kind of like let me hear a certain reel-to-reel recording of like one, much beloved spiritual teacher at the time, who was very lighthearted and, in his approach, humorous, and, especially for people who grew up in the 60s. And I heard this, and he spoke about how, yes, by entering in, the meditation is an opportunity to enter within the cave of one's heart and hang out with Krishna and Jesus and Buddha. And he said, and it's just something at that time triggered my memory of that experience 1 year before, like which I mentioned to you. And so just that, again, just those little tiny little kind of like, nudges from our beloveds, I actually literally, because I still knew nothing, studied nothing, practiced nothing, I literally just opened up the yellow pages. Remember, this is early August of 1976. There was no such thing as internet or any of this. So I just opened up the yellow pages under yoga. And I flipped it open, and there was like all these different, like, yoga centers and organizations in the Los Angeles area. And I saw like, Self-Realization Fellowship, the Inner Light Ministry, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And I went, whoa, I said, these other ones are like local. This one's international. So it's got to have something going for it. I mean, like if it's like international, it's got to have something going for it. So I literally called up the temple and I spoke to a nice gentleman. I think he was the assistant of the Bhakta program, Kamrabhata or Karmabhata, his name was. I think I'm pretty sure that Srila Tripurari Maharaj will remember any of these older names that I'm about to mention. And so I asked him how much it would cost to come and just kind of like, try out living in the ashram for a while, just to see what it felt like as an experiment, an exploration, just like playfully, like sense of adventure. I thought to myself, well, I already got like 18 years of like Western education. Why not have like a little Eastern education now, just to kind of balance things out, And he said, "Oh, yes, we don't charge anything. There's no charge." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yes." He said, "However, you need to follow a few rules if you're going to live in the ashram. Like you have to follow some rules." And I said, "Sure. What are they?" And he said, "Well, you have to be a strict vegetarian." I said, "Oh, I already am. I already have been for the last 6 months. He said, "Oh, great." And he said, "No gambling?" I said, "Gambling." I said, I must play poker with my friends like 3 times a year. I think I can like stop, not do that, no problem." And he said, "No intoxication?" I said, "No problem. I'm not like a big, like intoxicant user, anyway." And he said, and you have to be completely celibate. I said, "Oh, that makes complete sense to me." He said, "It does?" Because remember, it's like August of 1976, and I'm like 21 years old or something, 22 years old. I said, "Yeah, it makes sense because, having like a meaningful relationship with a lady, it takes a lot of time and energy and heart. And, your attention is like, so to have your attention like focused all on just the ashram, life, it just makes total sense to me." He said, "Oh, you'll do really well here." And he invited me to come, and he picked me up and brought me over. And I was asking questions on the way there. And one of the questions I asked him, he brought me to New Dwarka, temple. And it was the first Hindu temple of any kind ever that I had ever stepped into, And so it was like, oh my God, like I couldn't believe my eyes. They were like, at that time, there was like, not only like it was wall-to-wall murals and paintings, but like the ceiling had that like huge mural of Mahaprabhu with like the Panchatattva doing Sankirtan. And like, at that time, they don't have it anymore, but at that time, there was like a ledge just below the ceiling with all like the demigods and goddesses glancing down on like the congregation, like offering benediction. It's like, oh my God, like those particular figures were later brought to the Fate Museum. The Fate Museum, you may know of it like that. And so, along with so many other wonderful figures, so I said, like I said to him, a lot, I mean, there's this ongoing controversy for like who knows how long about whether God is a person or not a person. Like, well, what is your take on that? And he said, "Oh yes, God is definitely a person." I said, "Okay, does anybody, have like a kind of like an idea what God looks like?" And he said, "Oh yes." And he, in the temple room, he brought me over to the picture of Krishna with Srimati Radharani. And I don't know if you're familiar, but in New Dwarka, there's this like extraordinary painting. I believe it might have been done by Shamarani, Jadharani previously. And it's similar to the painting on the volume 1 of the Krishna book cover, you know, and it has like this glorious little picture painting of Srila Prabhupada in the corner, in the lower right corner of the painting, and he's got his eyes closed, like an ecstasy, and he's just got his kartals. He's holding up like some kartals, and he's just like singing and like like absorbed in this vision of Radha and Krishna. And so he said, that's God, that's Krishna. And I looked at the painting and I said, that also makes total sense. He went, it does? I said, well, yeah, because he's blue like the sea and the sky and the veins running through our bodies. That blueness of life, like it makes total sense to me. I said, who's the lady? And he said, that's Srimati Radharani. He explained, etc., her position. And I went, wow. This is like so that was also like a major experience. You just being, and then the next morning, the very first Mangal Artik. I mean, imagine a person who's never gone to any Hindu ceremony ever. And then suddenly it's like 4:30 in the morning, Mangal Artik, and there's like 300 people at that time, like 300 people attending Mangal Artik, and I'm like looking around and going, "Oh my God, what? This is not like from this earth. This is not from this planet. What's going on here right now?" And then the deity doors opened. And there was and like the pujaris came out and blew the conch shells and started waving the incense. And I went, I'm not leaving here. I'm just never going to leave. And later on, I'll just conclude this question with later on. I asked, my Bhakti program leader, my main Bhakti program leader was Danavir Prabhu. And probably was a very good friend of Srila Tripurari Maharaj at the time. He later became a sannyasin himself, Danavir. And so I asked him, those deities on the extreme right side, because I never saw Jagannath deities before. So I said, those deities on the extreme right side, is that what Krishna looks and his, and the others look like on another planet? And he went, no. And he explained Lord Jagannath, and like that. So it was an unforgettable, beginning like that.
Yeah, that sounds pretty epic. I can't believe there were 300 people every morning at the Mangal Art.
It seemed that way. It could have been only 200, but
But still,
when the numbers get that high
yeah,
in that space, it's like, who knows?
yeah.
you know.
So at that time, Tripurari Maharaj was not at New Dwarka anymore. I think he was in Chicago or something. But when did you meet Tripurari Maharaj for the excuse me, for the first time? What can you
Yeah,
remember that, and what was the
yeah, yeah. The very first time I ever met Srila Tripurari Maharaj. So what happened was, as I told you, this was just like a leap. It was like a leap into the unknown for me, just coming right off the street and into yes, now I'm going to be a monk for the rest of my life. So I wasn't able to sustain that. It only lasted for some time, and then I left and rejoined. I just needed a little break to just kind of absorb. It was too much all at once, like an implosion, something. It was just like you know but a very positive one, I might add. So what happened was, after some short time, I left the New Dwarka temple and rejoined. I just stayed. My mother begged me, please come back. Let's talk and that kind of thing. So
where did your mom live actually? Where did,
Brooklyn,
oh, so
Brooklyn,
you're from Brooklyn. Okay.
New York City. Yes, yes. Um, so I returned home, and just to stay with my mother again, just to take a break, like a breather, some space to absorb, everything that I experienced in New Dwarka, including the wonderful association of the other devotees who were there, and my first service was like doing Harinam down Hollywood Boulevard. And like that. And of course, by that time, I shaved my head and gave away all my possessions and etc. But it was, again, that was a little too much for somebody who's just coming off the street, with no, prior preparation. So I was in New York. I just, after a few months, I rejoined the mission at the Manhattan Temple. It was in Manhattan at that time. 12-story building, glorious, led by Adikeshava Swami at the time. And excuse me, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, I believe, was the zonal GBC or something like that, with Adikeshava, something like that. And oh yes, I remember. So I originally, for the first 2 years, starting from that point, I was a Samkirtan devotee, but not chanting on the street like in New Dwarka, but rather distributing magazines, Back to Godhead magazines for donations, and occasionally books, Bhagavad Gitas and Srimad Bhagavatams, at an airport or, like elsewhere. And so during that time, myself and about, I'd say, 8, 9 other devotees were living in a little satellite center in New Hartford, first in New Hartford, Connecticut, and then in East Hartford, Connecticut. Gorgeous locations in New England like that. And in that satellite center, we used to go, like, whenever there was like a very prominent sannyasin from within, ISKCON, coming to speak at the Manhattan Temple. My leader in the center, Kritakrit Prabhu, he would say, we're come on, pack a few things together. We're going to Manhattan for a few days. Tripurari Maharaj is coming, or Achyutananda Maharaj is coming, or someone else is coming to speak at the Manhattan Temple. We have to go and we have to get their association and hear them speak. So, oh, great. So the first time I ever heard Srila Tripurari Maharaj speak was probably like like early 1978, I want to say, or sometime during that year. And it was wonderful and inspiring, and as and here, and just like at that time when Srila Prabhupada, well, actually by that time Srila Prabhupada passed away by 78, but during the time that Srila Prabhupada was alive, and I was like in the mission while he was still alive, you could feel his presence, his purity, and his energy just permeating, like the entire atmosphere, and even like an aura, like around the whole community, not just confined within the building. And so that kind of carried that. I felt that continue for me all the way through, for so many more years after, his Srila Prabhupada's departure from the world. And so that was the first time that I actually kind of saw or heard Srila Tripurari Maharaj speak. We didn't actually become friends, though, until some years later. Of course, while he was at the Chicago Temple in 1984, Mark and Day, you probably know this story. You may be from. Do you know that story?
Maybe not. Let's hear.
Okay. Yeah. Well, while I'm doing the best I can within the time we have here. But this is pretty meaningful. I came to a crisis point while I was, I had been just like kind of like going on the inspiration and input which was received from Srila Prabhupada through his presence, after his physical departure, and his books and his words and his recordings. And I also had an opportunity to be on the Back to Godhead staff, as a proofreader and an assistant, uncredited assistant editor of his Back to Godhead magazine for 1 year. And so I just felt so strongly, like his presence within me for so many years. But then at one point, there came a point, it was like in 1983, while I was living in the Mount Airy temple. I lived in so many different, I was so blessed, so fortunate to be able to experience so many different temples, within the mission, ISKCON mission, all over, like New Vrindavan, Gita Nagari, both of those fabulous farm communities, and Laguna Beach, when Agni Dev was the temple president, and Chicago, St. Louis, etc. And so I was in Mount Airy, Pennsylvania. I was like a full-time pujari at that time, for Radha, Sri Radha Sharat Bihariji, and Jagannath deities in the center. They were in the center, Jagannath deities. And so, but I came to some kind of an internal crisis that, like it's, I don't know if this is going to work anymore without Srila Prabhupada's physical presence. I don't know how I'm going to be able to like go the distance. And so, like, I went to my head supervisor, head pujari, was Preraka Prabhu, later became Pran Kishore, beautiful name given by Srila Narayan Maharaj. I went to my authority and said, Prabhu, I can't continue. Like, I said, so I need a break again. I need to take a break from temple engagement here. But I want to train up the next pujari who replaces me, because it's not as if anybody can just like walk on the altar and do what I've been doing. It's not, they can't. I have to train them personally, to give the care and attention and love, to the seva, that I feel I have tried to give, during this time. And he looked at me and he said, wait a minute, you're telling me you're blooping in advance and that you want to train up the next person to replace you? He said, nobody bloops that way. That word bloop, I don't know if you've heard that word, bloop. Means like leave the temple. So he said, your heart is not really in that. Well, what's really going on for you? So I told him what I told you. And he said, wait a second. He said the same thing as Gary said in the earlier story. He said, shh, come with me to my room. I'll show you something secret. And he pulled out Srila Sridhar Maharaj's copy of his first book, Search for Sri Krishna, Reality the Beautiful. And he said, here we go. He said, you have to promise me you'll read this book before you bloop. I said, oh, Sridhar Maharaj, I said, I visited Srila Sridhar Maharaj, like, yes, I'm doing the best I can because I'm watching the time here. I said, yes, I remember when I was in ISKCON, this is another seva that I had in ISKCON, I was in the Vaikuntha players. And I was playing like Lakshman in the Ramayana. And so we were touring, our base was in Juhu Beach, and then we toured. Well, first, myself and the devotee who played Ravana, we traveled to India together. We were roommates. Lokamangala, wonderful, talented devotee actor, and so we went to Mayapur, Vrindavan first, then Mayapur, then Bombay, and we traveled in Gujarat, and played to like audiences of like up to 15,000 people per night. And it was like, whoo. I said, well, now I got the benefit of how all those years of like, being a theater student in college. So anyway, so Lokamangala one day in Mayapur said, oh, many devotees are going across the Ganges, to hear Srila Prabhupada's godbrother speak, Srila Sridhar Maharaj. Would you like to come also? Adhokshaja, that was my name at the time in ISKCON. Later, so I said, sure. I mean, what normal person wouldn't want to go visit a godbrother of Srila Prabhupada, So we went, and, so I got a chance to go a couple of times and be with him in the public satsangs, and that many ISKCON leaders were there at the time, so courageously and, humbly, like going to like get, advice and instruction that, they could not get elsewhere. And so, so then going back to the present, in the story I was telling you, so I told Preraka Prabhu, I said, I've heard him speak. It was nice. It was a nice experience. But again, just like, like earlier I mentioned to you, it didn't leave like an impression. It didn't leave like, oh, like now this is the next thing I have to like leave ISKCON and do this instead. And no, it didn't work. It didn't happen that way. I stayed in the mission, and, I continued like that. So Preraka said, you have to read this book, and then, you can leave if you like, and I'll let you train up the next pujari, like that. And so I read the book, and it was like, literally, it was like magical. Again, total grace. It was like, I thought to myself, wait a minute, why was I thinking of leaving? I can't remember why I was thinking of blooping. I can't remember now. No, it was so magical. And so, so of course, shortly after that time of like, many ISKCON devotees going together to visit with Srila Sridhar Maharaj, then the GBC made a policy that no one is allowed to do that anymore, like that. You know about that. And so, and then gradually, while I was living in Mount Airy, it was also, one gentleman who was like also like fond of Srila Sridhar Maharaj and his teachings, he started becoming a little too vocal. And so then the leaders started saying, no, anybody who's, like a follower of Srila Sridhar Maharaj is not allowed to live in this temple anymore, or any ISKCON temple. Ultimately, that's how it played out, like the following year and two, and etc. going forward. So, so at that point, Markandeya. So now going even further back into the story. So we were in Chicago, and I had already like decided that I was going to seek out the company of Srila Sridhar Maharaj's most intimate followers in the West, and ultimately return to India to be with him, myself, like, in the future. And so I showed these books. I also had I think I had a copy of Sri Guru and His Grace at the time. And I presented them to Markandeya, who is one of my best friends in the Preraka, Kritakrit, Markandeya. These were like my three best friends in the whole mission, like, throughout my years. And so, when Markandeya read the books, he said, "Oh, Tripurari Maharaj is passing through right now. He's visiting. Right, he's here now. You should give these books to him. Give these books to him." And I said, I'm nothing to him. I'm just like, I've heard him speak. I appreciate him, but I'm not like his bosom buddy or anything like that. I said, you are, Markandeya. You are his bosom buddy. You and he personally went together to the airport and distributed books together. I never did that with him. like personally, just like that. I said, it would be more appropriate, like if you gave him the books and see what happens, see if he likes them like that. So Markandeya said, all right, and he did that. And, that's that story. And then later, just to conclude this segment, when Sri Maharaj left the ISKCON mission himself, and I believe the first major temple that he established was in Noe Valley in San Francisco. Yes? Yeah.
Yes.
That's when we became really friends, like one-on-one, the way Markandeya was previously with him, able to talk one-on-one, etc., have like a connected relationship. And so, it became, he's since that time, like he was so gracious to me, so very generous in so many ways. Like I was able, to just call him like, for different advices at different times, which he so graciously gave. And, when he saw that I had this kind of like history of like, really caring about what I was doing, like in all of the temples, no matter where I was, he actually, first he invited me to become the editor, because I had been editing and proofreading just like stacks and stacks of books, for so many different wonderful Gaudiya Vaishnava teachers, starting with The Golden Volcano of Divine Love book by Srila Sridhar Maharaj, Loving Search for the Lost Servant, Subjective Evolution of Consciousness, so many of Srila Sridhar Maharaj and Srila Narayan Maharaj, the first 5 English books that came out in the English language of Srila Narayan Maharaj, the book, The Heart of Krishna, Puri, Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj, and so many more like that, Navadvip Da Mahatmya of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and more, like that. So he invited me.
You say you were the editor for all those books?
Or proofreader, or both.
Mm-hmm.
Either editor or proofreader, or both. Like that. And so then he invited me to become the one of the editors of the Clarion Call, Srila Tripura Maharaj's Clarion Call magazine, and then later when he was in Oregon, the Gaudiya Gazette magazine, like that. And he even invited me one day, surprisingly, during the time I was married, which incidentally, my marriage was performed in his temple in Noe Valley. My wife at the time, Shanti Lata, and I were married by, I asked Srila Tripura Maharaj if he would perform the actual marriage ceremony. And he said, I don't have a license to do that. He said, however, Sadhu Maharaj, he has a formal license to do that. He'll do the ceremony. I said, okay. Wonderful devotee, Sadhu Maharaj at the time, Latino devotee, assisting Srila Tripura Maharaj at that time. So we were married there, and then later he said Alwarnath, because that's the name Sridhar Maharaj gave me. I received both Harinam and Gayatri mantrams from Srila Sridhar Maharaj himself back in spring of 1985. And I even have a photograph of that, which I can send you if you like. And I have a photograph of myself with Srila Tripura Maharaj, like back in the late 80s at the Noe Valley Temple as well. I can send you that.
Oh, yes, definitely, please.
And so, in any case, one day he said, Alwarnath, would you like to be like the assistant temple manager, or like kind of assistant supervising, overseeing type person, assisting this other nice, large husky Indian gentleman, Shamananda, at the time was there. And so he said, would you like to kind of be like a temporary temple president? He said, I have to go traveling and preaching for like a month. Would you like to come and do that? I was married at the time. I said, absolutely. I literally said, without even consulting with my wife at the time, Shanti Lata, I said, absolutely. So I just, I explained to her, like this is like an opportunity for seva, that I cannot pass up. I said, so I'm going to just like we'll be in contact, and I said I'll come and visit you, like like on the weekends. I'll come and visit you one night a week on the weekends, and I'll go back to San Francisco, because we were living in Cupertino at the time, the Cupertino foothills. It was just 45 minutes, away. So I just would visit her literally without even sleeping overnight in my own home. I just like would drive back to San Francisco because I was like, I had this responsible position. And so like, it was again, all through the years, right up to when I was living at Rupanuga Bhajan Ashram in Vrindavan, which Srila Tripurari Maharaj, was co-directing with Sripad Narasingha Maharaj, at the time. I lived at Rupanuga Bhajan Ashram for like 6 months. And oh my God, the opportunities for seva were glorious, like being the pujari, one of the pujaris for Sri Sri Gaurada Madhava, and editing and proofreading the book of Srila Prabhupada's teachings called Search for the Ultimate Goal of Life, presented by Sripad Narasingha Maharaj, etc. like that. Oh my God. It was just the whole, all the years combinedly, and of course, you may know, he so generously offered me the opportunity to live in the sannyas ashram, for some years, which I did as well. So I went through the whole kind of like Vedic system of like first being like a brahmachari monk, and then married, and then vanaprastha. I received the vanaprastha title from Srila Govinda Maharaj after Srila Sridhar Maharaj passed away, and then, like the sannyasin order and like that. And so it was just all of it was like, it was just all one gift comprehensively, like, just top to bottom, inside out, end to end, like that.
Nice. It is 8:52 already, but I still would like to hear a little bit about what it was like in that Noe Valley temple, because I haven't heard much from that time. So if you could give a little bit of a feel for the listeners what it was like back then.
Oh boy. I remember that's when I met, well, Vrindaranya Devi, for the very first time. She was there. She was actually there at that time, as far as I recall.
I think that's Vrindavan Dasi. That's a different person. Yeah, because she joined in Eugene.
Okay, no, I definitely remember Vrindaranya from Eugene. That's for sure. But I was thinking perhaps she might have been in Noe Valley as well. But if not, then not. That's okay. But the atmosphere, I remember, I just loved the way Srila Tripurari Maharaj, he interwove, the transmissions, the divine transmissions from both Srila Prabhupada and Srila Sridhar Maharaj. He just interwove them so seamlessly. There was never any sense of like, well, this is this and that's that, and I have to try to harmonize. No. There was no complex intellectual calculations required. And I just, like, he just exuded this sense of like, again, just at least for me at that time, he seemed to be so like accessible and available and down to earth, like a real person, rather than like, someone like in a high position, again, like, I just love it when people are able to move through the world, through life, with that sense. He can, it just came to me. He always kind of like, in a very subtle, gentle, like way, convey the sense that friendship is paramount. friendship is really the underlying foundation for all other relationships, and he has directly communicated that much more recently in these Sunday morning gatherings that we have, you know. But I've directly experienced that to be so. And I love his lightness, the way, like, he doesn't take like the relative world and all of its manifestations and situations so deadly seriously. And what to speak, I know I'm mixing other things that came later with your question about Noe Valley, but I can't help it, because this is so, it's meaningful for me to kind of like express this for all of his dedicated, like students and followers and lovers, that I love the way he takes care of the cows himself, and attends to all of these just simple, like routine, supposedly routine things. They're not routine. There is nothing ordinary, in like this, the divine life of being guided, from within by our beloveds. And whoever our beloveds may be, it could be Krishna Balaram or Sri Sri Gaur Madhava or some other, like Ishta Devata, like that, to be innocently, divinely guided, in that way, as he has already always shown the example of being so, like that.
Oh, sorry, you didn't hear me. So it was Murley was trying to log in with the same credentials, so it kicked me off for a moment. But I told him to come in with his own credentials. So you can keep going, and I'll try to keep the boat afloat, so to speak.
Okay. It's all right. We can conclude now, and we can even have another interview another time if you would like. If
Yeah,
you
I
feel you
think
would
there.
like to. I mean, it's up to you. I mean, I feel pretty complete for now, and so that you can, like move onward to the next engagement, the next, like Zoom session.
Yeah, so Maharaj's class is just about to start, but we
Yeah.
should continue this at least, if not like in this forum. I definitely want to. Oh, Ram Mohan's already saying here, we should do a part two. So, yeah, I think we should do that because I don't know if you heard, but I'm actually right now starting to work on interviews about Tripurari Maharaj because I want to write a book, like a biography of him. And so
Wow.
I do want to actually talk to you personally, like to go more into detail and like more closely kind of. But I think people would like to also hear, our Sangha members would like to hear more. So we should do it part two soon.
Okay. Sounds wonderful.
Yeah. So I guess we'll stop here, and I have to stop the stream so I can start it again for Maharaj's class. But thank you so much.
Absolutely.
It was a real wonderful session, and we'll have another one.
Oh, thank you. Thank you also so much, Prabhu. And like huge, warm-hearted namaste and dandavas to Srila Tripurari Maharaj, as always.
Bye.